You're listening to the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast, featuring real business owners telling real stories about their real business experiences. Here are your hosts, John Chiappetta and Eric Jorn.
All right. Welcome to the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast. Today we got Brin Kline from Assured Auto Works in Melbourne, Florida. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Welcome,
Thanks
Brin.
so much. Thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to hanging out with you guys today.
Definitely. And that's the whole theme of this podcast. We're hanging out, talking shop, ironically.
There you go.
Brin, tell us a little bit about what your business, what do you guys do? What do you specialize in?
Assured Auto Works is a general repair shop, so we work on just about everything. But I think what sets us apart a little bit is thoroughness and accuracy of the diagnostic process. So that's kind of what sets us apart. We kind of live, eat, breathe automotive technology. And so naturally, that's a part that we like a lot. So we have a reputation in the area. We have several shops that bring us stuff, but I also do a division of the company does mobile diagnostic and module programming and things for other shops in the area. That part of it doesn't do any retail, motoring public work, but just helping out other shops. And we've been around for about 13 years now.
And you don't just have a good reputation in the local market. I mean, you're well known throughout the industry as being an expert in diagnostics.
Well, I don't know if I'm well known for being an expert in diagnostics. I mean, I have to be careful because I teach part-time for CarQuest Technical Institute. And when you wear that hat, you have to kind of act like you know a lot, I guess.
That features the ultimate confirmation of knowledge, right?
I mean, they tell you that when you're standing in front of people, you have to kind of qualify yourself, pretty early on. So it kind of defeats the purpose for me to be too humble, I guess. But really what it boils down to is just being involved, going to national events, getting to know a lot of people. So I've been going to national training and conferences and stuff for years, and I've been fortunate to meet a lot of very sharp and a lot of really awesome people. So to say I'm got a good reputation, I don't know. I guess it's pretty decent, but I'm fortunate to have a lot of friends all over the country and sometimes world, for that matter.
Definitely. I mean, that's how we're talking from the Chicagoland area down to Melbourne, Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw you at one of those conferences. Well, man, I don't know what year was that, but that was in Texas, speaking of.
Yeah. All over the country.
Yep.
Or a country of its own, right?
Exactly.
So, how'd you get started?
We're not much different than a lot of independent shops. I think the overwhelming majority of independent shops are started from technicians that felt like they could do it better. And I think that stems from an industry that doesn't really do a really good job of taking care of their people or their clients, for that matter. So, and I have to be careful with this too, because we understand that anytime we speak negatively about the industry, it just kind of reinforces, the reputation that we unfortunately have, but we have to be realistic as well. And so basically, from a young age, I was very inspired, I guess, and just intrigued with the idea of being able to fix and figure out things in general. But cars became it for me, I guess. Got in trouble in high school and my dad knew a shop owner and put me to work since I couldn't really go to school for a while. So, but with regard to opening a company, I've worked at several places and, they're good, but they weren't really what I was looking for. I mean, I feel like, the level of, accuracy and I wanted to be so good technically. There was, I felt like I hit the ceiling anywhere else. And then, I don't know what to say except for that we're just not treated as well as we should be. So, and then the cycle just kind of repeats itself because you have technicians turn shop owner, oftentimes way too naive. They think all they need to know is fix a car and they can do it better than the shops that they've worked at. And then they open the shop and then they experience the same problems that everybody else experienced. They don't necessarily know how to deal with them. So it's just kind of a vicious circle, but that's where we ended up. And fortunately for me, I just over time, I think I have to give it credit to being able to attend these events and meet other successful professional people and take part in some social networks that kind of are designed for our industry and learn about business and shop management, stuff like that. We've been able to do okay, but the first years are certainly painful. And if you're not prepared ahead of time, and unfortunately, that's usually what happens.
So what are you doing? You think that's different than maybe other shop owners or companies that are larger with your employees that, you obviously you said that you hit some ceilings and you wanted to keep going further. Are you able to develop your employees to the extent that you wanted to be treated?
In a lot of ways. I mean, we're still working on a lot of things, to be fully transparent and potentially a little bit vulnerable. Like we're just now starting. I mean, you guys helped us with the retirement plan. Appreciate y'all for that. Yep. That was great. But we're just now starting the process for like a healthcare reimbursement, which is, I've worked at places that were able to offer those things, but those are a must kind of situation now. Embarrassingly enough, it took this long to get there. But with regard to what we're doing different, I think is just, I guess, being accurate and handling the repairs the way they should be and using the quality parts that we should use and making sure that the shop is equipped so that we can do the jobs properly. So many places I worked at, every place is different. They have their strengths and weaknesses, of course, but there's so many of them were just so untooled. They weren't. There was a chain store that I worked at temporarily just because of a friend managed it. And I thought I'd give it a shot. They didn't have a battery charger. They didn't have a jump box. They didn't have a bench vise. They didn't have a shop press. They didn't have a scan tool. Wow. Like it's incredible. That's probably, a pretty extreme example, but everywhere you went, there was something that just didn't line up. And I was talking last night, this gentleman named Pete Rudloff that owns a shop in Delaware. He was on a podcast and talked about being unemployable. And I guess I feel like maybe I was unemployable, but at the same time, I feel like the things that I was looking for are things that should be there. But with regard to what we're doing different, I just make sure that we have what we need on the front end and we have what we need in the back end in the shop. And that I try to instill a culture of wanting to be the best technically and, dealing with customers and customer service and all of that. So ongoing training, we try to attend a training conference out of state at least once a year. I feel like that's really good for your team to know that you think that they're worth investing in, airfare and hotel accommodations and taking time to close the shop and get out of the shop and increase your knowledge and become better at what you do and get those opportunities to meet some really awesome people and establish great relationships from other professionals that attend these same events. I think in just having a good culture, having the right people that kind of that enjoy working with each other is key too. Eric, you mentioned feeling the pressure of being able to find good people. I think everybody's dealing with that. I mean, the automotive industry as well. But because of that, and it's not necessarily a new problem, but because of that, literally companies have to fill bays with warm bodies. I mean, and so. Yeah, the culture's not always right. You have, animosity within the shop and stuff like that. And I can have an example really quickly. I was managing an independent shop one time, and I was working with some technicians that I really don't think they should be working on cars. And
That's dangerous.
I mean, just not professional, they're not really, they're not quality oriented type of thing. And I had a dealer service manager or service director contact me about them, kind of wanting to know, kind of a reference type of situation. And I know that you're not supposed to say much, right? But I knew the service director, and I just feel so passionately about this industry and wanting to make sure we're doing our best to keep the right people in it. I gave a little bit of an insight that I think should have scared him away, but he hired him anyways because they need warm bodies and bays, basically. So,
I mean, we're talking about working on 6,000-pound bullets or even heavier. I mean, I think a little bit of due diligence around, somebody willing to have a quality enough or do a quality enough job to make sure that a car's safe leaving the shop. I mean, I think that's table stakes there.
I find it interesting. You're talked a lot about your culture. I think, from the helping your employees get out of the shop, increase their knowledge base, providing them with healthcare and an opportunity to save for the future. I think all of those things were once only found in large entities. And I think the fact that we can push it down to a smaller company and deliver the same type of quality, if not better than what these other companies, I think that's huge in the industry, across the board. I mean,
totally.
I just, I wish more people had that mindset that they can do this.
I mean, especially in the independent automotive service. I mean, we feel like we have to compete with chain stores and dealerships for the market share, but not only that, the talent. And, I think we have a lot to offer, but traditionally, independent shops they weren't able to compete with regard to healthcare and retirement plans and things like that at the same level. So not across the board. Obviously, there's some really good, successful independent shops that have been doing that. But, we're, like I said, we're a little bit embarrassed that it took as long as it did to do so. But we're excited to be able to offer those things to our team because, really, I didn't want to open a business. I'm not really money motivated. I really wasn't looking to be the head guy in charge kind of thing. It was really, I just wanted to find a really good place to work, and I just struggled to do so for a while. But that said, I'm here, and because of the help of some folks, we've done pretty well. But really, my goal now at this point is to be a good example for the motoring public of what an auto repair shop company should be, but also be the best possible place for automotive service professionals to work. I really, really strongly believe that, and everything that I do within the industry really is kind of circles around that, doing some training, technical training for technicians, that's about making sure that they are passionate about their career choice and that that they're enjoying their days as opposed to dreading them, so yeah, I agree.
And what was absolutely brilliant about what you said, and I know it took time to get there, right? Nothing happens overnight. But everything you just said, the money follows, right? If you're gonna execute your business like just how you described, that the money will follow, right? If you put money first, you're gonna cut corners other ways, right? But if you're gonna focus on quality, creating great atmosphere, finding the best people to work for you and creating the best environment for them to work in and setting an example of, what premier service is in the industry. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're doing all those well, unless you just aren't willing to charge a fair price for what you're providing, the money will follow and you'll have a very good business. So, hats off to you for sticking through that and not cutting the corners to, put money first. That's it's definitely admirable. And, I've seen that growth happen over the last 6 years from your shop, and it's been really cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been cool for me to see too. Like, I mean, I'm not money motivated, but it certainly is nice to feel secure in that area. And again, the more successful the shop is, going back to our team, it puts us in a better position to make sure they're treated better than they would be anywhere else. But, when you say the money will follow, I mean, I don't want to discourage anybody, but that's when I talk about shop owners, technicians turned shop owners and being naive and not being prepared. The problem is just being good at what you do, unfortunately, is not. So that's been some of our frustration for 13 years is we see firsthand, especially now that we're going into shops helping them. And I don't want to, I have some really good clients, but I have a lot of shops that I wish they would do business differently. And so, but regardless, we see firsthand really successful shops profitability wise and brand recognition and trust and loyalty from their customer base that do not have the same level of or desire to offer the same level of quality that they should, I guess I should say. So I don't know. As I see some folks, it's like the tortoise and the hare type situation. I see some of these shops, I feel like they're just whizzing past me, and I see what they're capable of doing and what they're not capable of doing, and it can be frustrating. So, and another part of that aspect is if you're a technician turned shop owner, you don't realize how important the front end is and having the right person that deals with the customers and to do all of those, establish relationship and build loyalty within your customer base. And, the service advisor or service manager turned shop owner, I think has a little better advantage in that regard, at least starting off. But
or even sometimes somebody coming from completely outside of the industry, right? Where they have no bias. They come in and, they got the mindset purely of a business owner. I think it's a little bit easier to start a business when you have when you start with a business owner mindset than a craftsman or artisan mindset where you're the person actually creating the product or delivering the service and then building the business around it. You get too much focused on doing the work and not focused as much around building a business around the work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's, and we've seen that evolution for you, over several years. I know, working with Bill has been a huge help in that and kind of turning your probably thought process from a wrench to even looking at the numbers. And I know Bill's a big numbers guy, and I think everybody in the industry respects the heck out of him, and I've learned a ton from him alone, and I'm sure he's helped you out more than you can imagine.
Yeah. So Bill, one thing that we in the automotive service industry have is we're very fortunate to have like a ton of resources. Mm-hmm. So training, shop ownership, management, service advising, sales, telephone skills, technical diagnostic, like the resources are incredible. We're very fortunate to have the resources that we have. And one of those is we're almost, there's a ton of business consultants and coaches. And so I was aware of business coaches for probably before we even opened. Early 2000s, I worked at a company I was a technician at the time, but they sent me to a service advisor course in Baltimore for ATI at the time. And so I was aware of coaches and consulting companies pretty early on. But it took me far too long to get some help, but Bill Haas with Haas Performance Consulting reached out to him. I don't know, I guess it's been 4 or 5 years maybe now. I don't know, something like that. But I think for those that are on the fence about trying to find help, I think there's some pride that gets in the way sometimes. Like I can do it on my own, and that kind of came with me as well. But because I've attended a lot of these training conferences, I've been to a lot of management classes, I felt like I understood the business pretty well and how to run it. But it's much different when the stuff you learn in class is very valuable and can help you build your business, but it is definitely different. Those are like sound bites compared to what you can get from a good quality business coach that fits your personality. There's
100%.
Again, we're very fortunate to have a lot of them. So if you do your research, you can kind of get a feel for who you would work best with, and then just pull the trigger and make the decision, make it happen. That said, I've been there in the beginning, and it's really frustrating to hear people tell you how much money you have to invest into the company to make it work properly. And so there's good news for those folks, at least in our industry. There's so many successful shop owners that are willing to offer some insight. And there's so many social network platforms dedicated specifically for shop ownership and diagnostic technicians and things like that. You really can get some help to kind of bridge that gap until you're comfortable to make that investment that will pay for itself. And it certainly has for me.
Yeah. I mean, creating a network, an accessible network is so important. And I mean, my Facebook is now taken over I'm in shop groups, I'm in accounting firm groups, I'm in tax groups, I'm in all these different groups, but I'm just a wealth of knowledge. And it was interesting just the other day. Somebody was like, is it worth spending the, $1,500 or $2,500 to go to the Shop Hackers conference? And I'm like, so you're paying this coaching company to coach you, and they're going to hold an event to bring together probably some peers that are trying to accomplish things very similar to you in the same way. And you're like, somebody commented like, oh, you don't need to spend the money. You can figure it out on your own. Like, that's the worst thing you can do, is to just say, I'm just going to try to bootstrap this and figure it out on your own. If you want to make that progress, I mean, anybody can spend the time to learn how to fix a car, right? Well, they come to you because you're going to fix it right the first time in an efficient manner and get them back on the road quickly.
Absolutely. And so the pride that I mentioned early on really is a heavy part of all of this. And, I think you spoke about Carm earlier with Remarkable Results podcast, but he has interviewed so many different automotive service professionals over the years. And I think I had a conversation with him at one time, and he's a big time advocate for shop management consultant and stuff like that. I think he gave me a statistic of all of the successful shop owners that he's interviewed and how many of them, had or are still working with business consultants. And then when you get to meet these successful shop owners and you think they've done it all on their own and that they're brilliant, and you realize that they're still working with people every day. It's like having that business partner without having the marriage of a business partner.
I like that.
You're not alone in that situation.
Yeah, that's
a great nugget right there.
Well, I'll tell you, within my client base alone, the shops that are that come from the coaching companies or are partnering with the coaching company are definitely much more profitable than the shops that are not. And, generally there's definitely a mindset divide too, right? There's, in the independent shop world, there's kind of two different shop owners. There's ones that are actively pursuing building a business. And then there's the old school mentality of like, I'm going to compete on things like price. I'm going to mostly just be a parts changer and fix. I'm not going to invest in that diagnostic equipment that my team needs. I'm not going to invest in a good customer experience, right? You got the guy that's all greased up walking up to the counter when a customer comes in, and they kind of embody that old school persona of a technician. And I think it's actually kind of bad for the industry.
It's really bad for the industry. I mean, almost all of our problems, I think, can probably be linked to poor management and bad decision-making skills. And it's not necessarily their fault per se. I mean, I guess it's their fault, but it's not like it's intentional. They just start in a situation where they're just naive and under-equipped. They just don't have the skills to do it properly. And then they get themselves in the same trouble that everybody else gets into. And then they try to find ways to get out of this trouble. And the ways that they're trying to cut corners is not the way you want to cut corners, And it just keeps going over and over and over again. And so everything that I do is about, making within the industry, anything that I volunteer my time with is really about trying to stop that cycle and just make sure because those situations are what cause, people that were working in the industry to really not like the industry that they're working in. So, but if you think about it, like, for those of you that are listening and that think you can figure it out on your own, consider this. I mean, many shop owners turn, or technicians turn shop owners, or people in this industry in general, it's not like most of us don't stay at one place for our entire career. We move around a little bit. And hopefully you find a good place and you stick, but because it's not always easy to find a good place to work, we move around a little bit. And what I've realized is that everywhere you go, you learn an incredible amount. Because of the work, the mix is different, whatever the reason, you're removing yourself from one environment that you've learned as much as you can from that environment. And then you move to another environment, and it's just different enough to where you learn some pretty cool stuff working with somebody else. Even if you're staying in the same place and another technician comes on board, you learn stuff from them as well. And sometimes it's just as simple as, oh, they have that tool that you weren't aware of, and now you've learned how to use that tool, and now you want to buy that tool. I mean, that same mentality applies to getting help with your business. You can invest some time to try to figure it out, but let's face it, the reality is you're putting fires out all day long, every day. You're working way too many hours. You're not getting paid enough. You're not going to invest the time to learn when you have the time, because you don't have the time. So get some help.
I think that's actually very accurate, not just in automotive industry. I think that's no matter what you're doing. So, any business owner going out there, I think they need to realize that they need doing it on your own and just say, I'm going to do it myself. I think you're going to limit the ability to bring in additional knowledge that you may not get just trying to do that on your own. I even think about for us, I mean, our own firm, we do everything that we can to create a better environment culturally. And it's not like we sit down in a circle and just say and bang our own heads. We bring people in, see what they have to offer, and try to put the best foot forward. That sounds like you're doing a lot of that, and that's awesome.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's super funny. Hot. It's like 110 degrees in the shop, and the guys are sweating. And I go out into the shop and I work on a car for 5 minutes, and I look like I've jumped in a pool of water. Like, I'm embarrassed about. There's so many things that we want to do better, controlled climate inside the shop is one of them. But it's everything. There's a lot of work to be done, and that's the good news is. That we don't have big shoes to fill. It doesn't take a lot for us to be, unfortunately, better than, a lot of others. But
yeah, it's so funny. I feel like the accounting industry or public accounting industry is like the white collar version of the automotive industry. Some of the things that I hear, the parallels, I mean, people that are going to accounting, I mean, for the longest time, the old school firms, right? We're going to do it this way. We're going to compete on price. I'm just going to find a body and I'm going to charge for their hours. And that's my business model instead of, a value focused technology, where can we find technology to replace hours? And it's not just because I don't want to reduce, or I don't want to bill by the hour. I want to bill by the value that we create, because that, I don't want somebody having to sell their life for the hours that they're willing to work. If they can create more value in less time, that's great. I mean, that is, that's mastery in a way. And a lot of what we've talked about today and what you've done for your shop is you're actively pursuing mastery in what you guys do. And that's, it's super respectful. And even when parents, think about when the industry that their kids go into, and, they might think of automotive or construction or, whatever it is, not being this utopia of education and pride, but anybody who goes into a career field and pursues mastery is super respectful, and they're gonna be successful. They're gonna make a good living, a healthy, comfortable living, and they better be making whoever surrounds them super proud because of that.
Yeah, it's here. I definitely admire anybody that is passionate about what they do, for sure. Absolutely.
So where do you think the industry is going to go in the next 5-10 years? And what adaptations do you think you're going to need to make? I mean, obviously I think cars are always changing and that kind of thing, but I guess just from your mindset, I mean, what's kind of the things that you're looking forward to maybe making some changes for yourself?
I mean, thinking about the future and I wouldn't say keeping me up at night, but that kind of same mentality would be, I think we're fortunate because we live, eat, and breathe automotive technology, and we attend a lot of training that we are at least mindful of the fact that we have to stay on top of that and keep going. But, different hybrids and EV, of course, are just going to continue to take up, a large percentage of the registered cars on the road. So I think, and it's not just about the technology changing. It's also that there's brand new vehicle manufacturers coming out with these EVs. So it's, you have to get familiar with these new companies. And in like the case of Tesla, it took years for them to make parts catalog and service information and scan tool stuff even available to professionals. So there's, I think, things like that. Just even though I feel like we're doing better than most, it is, I guess my concern is partially what drives me to make sure that we're trying to stay on top of all of that. And then, another one that's kind of a buzz topic is I think everybody that's paying attention is a little bit is excited and concerned about what, artificial intelligence is going to do to the world, I guess, for that matter. But speaking of which, we have a trade show training conference October 14th that's going to be occurring in Orlando, Florida, for automotive service professionals. And one of the classes, I was at a trade show in Kansas called Vision, and there was a session called Tech Talks where they have several different technicians do like little short talks as opposed to one person presenting like a 3 or 4 hour session. And one of the individuals, Sean Tipping, has a podcast as well, Automotive Diagnostic podcast. He did a presentation on AI and within automotive diagnostics, and I thought that was pretty cool. And he did a really good job with it. And it was just very interesting. And so I asked him, when we put this event on, I asked him, do you think you can put, a 3-4 hour worth of material together to teach at this event? And he said yes. So we have a class for that at the event. And it's really, we were talking about it last night. It's trying to identify how we can use this now to help us, but also kind of thinking about what this is going to do, in the long run. We're not the only ones thinking about it. Like, service information systems will probably have some AI built into it before long, so
the absolute power that it's going to create for people that are willing to adapt and use it, right? It's not going to be a silver bullet. Even us as early users of AI know that you can't just type in I guess play a little Wild West, just type in a number or type in a request and immediately take that answer, right? You still got to know what you're doing. It's just going to speed up that process for you, though. Like, especially when you have that knowledge level of, if I have this specific repair, and I'm tracing, where the fault is, which direction should I go? Here are my 2 directions. And AI will essentially search whatever database it's looking for and say, okay, 9 times out of 10, you got to go this direction. So this is what our suggestion is. So that way, instead of you having to either make that educate or just guess or test both, you might be able to use AI to query a really good response. I mean, we're essentially using it in almost exactly the same fashion, especially on the tax side of things, where oftentimes I sat through a diagnostic class that I facilitated with Milwaukee, and I'm listening to this class and I'm thinking to myself, it's what they're doing on the diagnostic, aside from the physical actually having to go do the testing, a lot of it is research that we do very similar of a process from a tax standpoint. And AI is being applied exactly the same way as I'm guessing it would be in the diagnostic space.
I mean, his presentation was really interesting. And I haven't really pursued AI myself, but, a specific example was, as service technicians, and I'm sure it's anywhere that you have to do some research and read some documentation to kind of get an idea of, maybe how a system works or how a tax law works or something like that. It can be overwhelming. It's written, in often ways that has no personality, and it's really sometimes hard to understand what you're trying to work through. I'm sure it's probably worse for you guys.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Yeah, absolutely.
So in his example, basically he cut some service information and pasted it in with this AI platform, and they were able, before he did that, he asked generic questions like, "This is the code I have, what could be causing this or whatever," and then it was really general information about something. It was totally not specific, and it was information that maybe a car owner could use to just better understand what it is that's going on with their car, but not really make any diagnostic decisions. So then he would cut and paste some service information specific to maybe the fault code or whatever that he had, and once he cut and paste that in there, then it laid out more of like a more efficient test plan, I guess, for the technician. So it's not like it's telling us what's wrong. And I think most of the motoring public feels like we have tools that do that already, but it gives the technician a better chance of interpreting it correctly and being more efficient through that process. And, I think that would be cool. And another example where we could use it is, our service advisor spends quite a bit of time trying to make sure that whatever notes a technician puts in, is our customers see those. So we got to make sure that they're pretty
presentable.
Yeah. And he spends quite a bit of time. He gets kind of frustrated with it sometimes. And I get frustrated with him because that becomes the bottleneck in the company. But I've told him, and I'm going to have to basically do it myself and walk him through it. But I've told him in some cases you might be able to cut that information that the technician, cut those notes out, post it in some AI platform, and then have it spit out a synopsis of what basically happened. You might be able to just cut and paste that information into the notes section and not have to spend all that time editing that stuff. So we're pretty excited about it. But
I'm sure in the shop management softwares, they're going to integrate that. So the ones the technician puts in there, it translates it into, legible explanation. I remember the days of interpreting CCRs and especially for warranty submission. And that, I spent as a service writer, I spent a lot of time making that submittable to the manufacturer to get the warranty claim approved, or cleaning it up if the customer sees it. And that was,
most of the time customers have no idea they look at an invoice and it may as well be in another language. Yeah. So we try our best to make it like we're talking to them and kind of explaining it to them. There's some technical sections, but we'll even say like, ignore this section unless you're having a hard time getting to sleep or whatever. But so definitely.
From a shop management system, I think there's a huge opportunity from the business owner or the shop owner standpoint of using AI. And I'm hoping that the big players in the shop management system world are looking to implement this. I'm thinking I might go into this database and say, okay, what makes and models of vehicles do I make my greatest ARO on, gross profit percentage? And then have that do some target mailers of who are registered vehicle owners of those vehicles and send them my advertisements instead of to random blast everybody. I'm going to send it to my highest grossing and highest profitable vehicle owners. And then I'm going to look at my lowest, what's my lowest profitable repair, right? Is this work that we aren't willing to do as a shop because it's very unprofitable, or is it something we have to do because, we want to be a comprehensive service center for a shop? And I think you're really going to find a way to nail down, because of this data will be available and more efficiently gatherable, I guess is the word. If you're not thinking about how you're going to use AI in your business from a business management standpoint and from a technical standpoint, you're already behind the 8 ball. I think the opportunities are boundless.
Yeah, I don't know. I said scary and exciting at the same time. I guess anything we don't know, yet know the capabilities, I guess, can be sometimes intimidating. But I think that's just it. As we know, like you said, you're behind the 8 ball. We know how important it's going to be. And I guess we're just concerned, are we going to be able to, we're going to keep our eye on it enough, we're mindful of it. So I guess we will at least be making a conscious effort to do so.
I think there's going to be a divide, right? There's going to be the shops that are going to these conferences and spending the time to educate and stay apprised of what's happening in the marketplace. You don't have to be the pioneer, right? But you got to be on the ball with it, right? And those shops are going to be the ones implementing it, and they're going to be successful. And the shops that are going to ignore it and bury their head in the sand are going to be like the ones still charging $80 a labor hour and, doing 100% markup on all the parts, but then sometimes I got to cut it back. And, if you're doing 100% markup, your gross profit margin is not going to be 50%. It's going to be much less than that because you're not going to mark up an engine 100%.
Right. Yeah.
But that's that's old school head in the sand mindset of a shop owner is, I haven't raised my prices in 10 years. This is how I'm going to mark up and do things. Or maybe they're doing flat dollar markups or something like that too.
I certainly hope you're right, because the problem is we've been saying that for so long because the technology in cars have advanced so much. So everybody, 30 years ago, people were saying, well, it's the folks that are going to be, paying attention to fuel injection or, computer controlled engine management systems. They're the ones that are going to survive. Everybody else is going to go out of business. And unfortunately, so far, it really, I don't know. Sometimes what happens, speaking of AI, is companies create solutions that kind of help, for example, like some of the service information systems like Identifix and others are starting to do the same thing. They have what I refer to as statistical based diagnostics. And they're basically databases based on certain problems of cars. And so they have this problem, they punch it in and they can see, well, how often does this fix that problem kind of thing? So I think a lot of these companies have created, scan tools will make a diagnostic data pit red if it's out of the normal, area that it should be in. And they'll have, same database type of information that they can tie to fault codes and stuff like that, which is, those are helpful resources, but unfortunately too much of the industry kind of relies on just following those blindly. And I think that some of those solutions, quote solutions, have maybe helped to keep people in business that maybe shouldn't still be here. But hopefully you're right. Hopefully as we move forward, only the strong survive, I guess.
No, you do bring up a good point with that. And I guess the key there, right, especially with the AI tools and automation, is trust but verify, right? Hey, they can send you down the right path based on statistics, but you still got to verify that there's a fault on that part before you change it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's pretty simple. I mean, we do it the same way if we use ChatGPT for tax research. We want to respond to their prompt on our question of, all right, where's the reg that we're going to go actually check the source and verify it, not just rely on whatever it spits out, because now you're just taking somebody else's word for it to a certain extent, especially Google's to a certain.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's a guess.
Yeah.
Regardless if it's your own personal experience or somebody else's or AI's, whatever you want to call it, I guess it's not experience. Ultimately, it's a guess until you've done your due diligence to make sure. So, and we just feel like the entire industry shouldn't be gambling with somebody else's money. Now, if it's a situation where it's an intermittent problem and you cannot duplicate it and the customer is frustrated with the fact that they feel like you can't solve their problem, then you can have a conversation with them. And there's no way for me to be 100% on it, positive that this is the cause of your problem because I can't duplicate it. That being said, if you're willing to take a risk, this may resolve your problem, knowing ahead of time that it may not as well, then we'd be happy to do that. But yeah, it's got to be their decision, not yours.
That's what happens when you get out of black and white. There's times when things are black and white and then times when they're gray. And if they're gray, sometimes you got to make a decision without having certainty or all the facts that you need. And that's where good communication comes in line, and having a really good service advisor really comes in line there, right?
Oh man, absolutely.
Make sure that conversation is had and accurately.
That's such a huge part. That's such a huge part of it going back to the money will follow type of thing, I recognized pretty early on that, in certain circumstances, I feel like I can turn on the charm a little bit and deal with our clients, but it's definitely not a day-to-day thing. It's just not who I am. It's not my personality. So, you can have the absolute best intentions, and you can be the absolute best at what you can do, but the perception is really what's important. And if your clients don't perceive that, then it's not going to do you any good. But unfortunately, the other comes into play as well. You can have somebody that can really turn on the charm and give the false impression that they're doing a really good job, and then not. So there's both of those sides of that coin. But don't assume that the knowledge alone is going to get you what you need. You got to make sure that you understand how the entire business has to operate for sure to be successful. But
definitely. So just to kind of recap all the things we talked about, right? So obviously mastery in what you're doing, finding the good people and creating good workspace for them, providing them the tools, resources, the benefits to provide, security in their life, and being consistent with it. If you follow those things, money sounds like the money will come, and you'll run a really good business. And then don't be afraid to jump in with a coach.
There you go. That's the one I was going to hit right there. I think that's huge. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, don't look at it as the dollar spent in a cost center. Look at it as an investment that you're going to get ROI on, and make sure you hold them accountable to that ROI.
I'm sure you've seen it a lot, but I mean, speaking of my personal experience, the growth that our company had in a course of the first couple of years of dealing with a coach was unbelievable, so it's a no-brainer, really. I mean, it definitely, you hear it all the time. That's one of the things that kind of kept me from pulling the trigger early on, is there's so many times we're hit with sales calls and they're promising you the world. And in some cases, maybe they've convinced you and you sign the line. And then all of a sudden now you get this fast food approach when they've promised you a 5-star, course. And that happens so often. I think that part can probably cause some reluctancy. So in the case of, as long as you're doing a little bit of research, and you have some options, find somebody that you feel like you're going to work with well. And if you don't hesitate to shift gears, man. Find somebody else and make the decision pretty quick. I think we all have a pretty good idea, but it's not like a situation too where you have to be flexible. You have to really be open-minded too, because there's a lot of clients for coaches where they have pretty good ideas, but the shop owner's so stubborn they don't really move with them. So be open-minded as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, somebody who works with shops that are with at least all the major shop coaching companies, and maybe close to most of the prominent ones, they're all kind of going down the same path. They just have their different flavors, right? And you got to figure out which one is you're going to be most likely to execute on, and whose style and whose process are you most likely to execute on, because they're all different. They all have different mindsets and preach slightly different things. But at the end of the day, I mean, they're going to try to make you into a good business owner, create some structure around your business, price yourself fairly, look at the numbers and understand the numbers, recruit and retain. I mean, they're all going to cover the same subjects. None of them are teaching new novel ideas. It's just who's the best fit.
Yeah. I mean, I'll leave you with something. If I don't mean to talk about this to the end, but I'll leave you something that I think is very important, just very specific examples of why it's important to find people that you can work with. This, in my specific case, I love automotive technology. And when you find successful independent shop owners, they're always telling you, don't work in the business, work on the business. Well, that is very true. You need to be able to understand how to run a successful shop and not be stuck in the back all the time fixing cars. But you also don't have to divorce or separate yourself 100% from that area if you're passionate about it. So there are certain coaches out there that probably wouldn't want to work with me because I'm still so technical and want to remain that way. Well, Bill understands that that is a passion of mine. So he understands and is a little more patient with me when things maybe don't happen as quick as they have, but he does see that they will happen. So there's that. And then there's other situations like, I have certain ideals of how, because I'm passionate about the industry in general, and I want to make sure that the whole entire industry improves, and that, people that choose this career choice, whether it's a service advisor or some manager, or whether they're technical, that they're passionate and that they're proud of the career choice that they made. Because that's so important to me, there's certain things that I think should be going on within the industry and handled the right way. Like, we shouldn't devalue ourselves. So if a technician's going to spend the time to be accurate on the diagnostic process, we should charge appropriately for it. We shouldn't be a race to the bottom. So, my personal opinion is I don't want to offer like discounts to try to drive business in the door. So I've got to find a coach or marketing people that are willing to work the way that I want to work, and that think that, work with me with the things that are important to me. So there's going to be things in every industry. If you're looking for a consultant, there's going to be things that you're passionate about, and you want to make sure that whoever you're working with is also passionate about those things, or respects them and allows you and helps you to strategize on how to get things done by following those ideals.
I think that was super sage.
Yeah. Leverage your passion.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Well, thanks, Brin. If anybody's in the Space Coast area of Florida, how can they find your shop?
Well, AssuredAutoworks.com. Yeah, Google AssuredAutoworks.com. I mean,
Facebook, LinkedIn.
We're in all those areas. If you're listening to the local radio, you'll probably hear stuff from us as well on there. But
cool.
Yeah.
Well, all right. I could talk with you for hours. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Much appreciated. And listeners, till next time, thanks for listening.
Thanks, Brin.
Thank you, guys.
You have been listening to the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast. You can hear more real stories from real business owners about what it takes to make it in business by subscribing to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you like what you hear, leave a review and a 5-star rating. This podcast has been brought to you by Kaizen CPAs and Advisors, providing advisory and accounting services to help you grow your business. Learn more at kaizencpas.com.